Nama saya Sita. Saya menghabiskan waktu saya sejak remaja untuk mencari orang paling berdosa. Kalau agama benar dan manusia akan mendapatkan balasan sesuai dengan apa yang dia lakukan di dunia, orang yang saya cari itu pasti akan mendapatkan siksa di dalam kubur. Dan saya ingin menyaksikannya.
Orang ini siapa sih?
Orang paling kejam yang pernah aku kenal.
The film begins by introducing siblings, Sita and Adil, who live with their parents, Sanjaya and Mutia, and help run their family's struggling business, Mr. Gun's Bakery. The bakery has been facing financial difficulties, and Adil, the older sibling, explains that their parents are under pressure due to the high cost of living in the city. He also mentions that their uncle has suggested sending them to a free Islamic boarding school to reduce their school expenses. Sita then playfully jokes that her brother would look pretty in a hijab. As the family prepares for another day at the bakery, 3 tourists enter the shop. Mutia helps one of them, while Adil notices a man outside acting strangely. The man eventually enters the store, and Adil offers him some fresh bread. Suddenly, the man starts coughing, prompting Adil to quickly offer him a glass of water, suggesting it will help clear his mind. As the man drinks, Adil notices he's wearing an earphone. The man cryptically tells Adil that he had doubts at first but confirmed them by recording something, showing Adil a cassette tape. He then warns Adil not to go outside, saying it's dangerous, and leaves, carrying a slightly heavy backpack. Meanwhile, inside the bakery, 2 of the tourists start a fight to distract Mutia, while another accomplice attempts to steal money from the counter. Sita catches him in the act, but he breaks free and tries to escape. She runs to Adil for help, but he seems unresponsive, so she alerts her father instead. Sanjaya rushes outside to confront the thief, and when Sita informs her mother, Mutia also runs outside to assist her husband. At that moment, a bomb explodes, killing both Sanjaya and Mutia in a tragic suicide bombing. This event profoundly alters Sita's life and challenges her religious beliefs, the impact of which will be explored further soon. The siblings are then taken to a holding room for questioning about the bombing. Sita notices Adil clutching a mixtape, and he, visibly shaken, tells her that the man had left it behind. When the police ask if the man who entered their bakery spoke to either of them, Adil replies that he only gave him a glass of water, which the man drank. Quickly, Sita grabs the cassette from Adil, and tells the officers that the man neither said anything nor gave them anything. Later, Sita hurries home with Adil following closely behind. Determined to uncover why the man carried out the bombing, she believes the cassette might hold a clue. But when they play the tape, they are horrified by what they hear, eerie screams and unsettling noises that suggest supernatural torment, along with the question, Man Rabuka, which translates to Who is your God? After the tragedy, Sita and Adil are sent to an Islamic boarding school, where they struggle to cope with the devastating loss of their parents. During one of their lessons, the teacher Inia introduces the concept of grave torture, explaining, the first question an angel will ask in the grave is, Who is your God? She clarifies that the grave is a temporary realm where souls reside until the day of judgment. Turning to Sita, Inia warns that those without faith will face severe punishment in the grave, including their bodies being crushed and tormented by stones, snakes, and fire. Sita, having lost her faith in religion, challenges this idea. She asks why there would be torture in the grave, if punishment also exists in hell. Sensing Sita's doubt in both religion and God, Inia responds, claiming that true faith requires belief without question, emphasizing that the concept of grave torture is rooted in both the Quran and Hadith. Sita becomes fixated on the notion of Siksa Kubur, the punishment inflicted on sinners after death, which she views as a myth. She provocatively asks if it's possible that an angel, or some God-fearing figure could truly inflict such violent harm, blowing people to pieces. Inia, caught off guard, is left stunned and speechless by Sita's bold questioning. Later, Sita meets Adil in the nearby forest, and insists they must reach the town before it is dark. Adil confirms the only way out is an old tunnel in the west, rumored to be haunted. Despite Adil's warning, Sita pushes on. Adil questions Sita why is she so obsessed in finding the grave where the bomber recorded the voice? Sita explains her determination to prove the recording is fake, and debunk religious concept of grave torture is nothing more than a myth. When Adil questions what will happen when she proves the recording is fake, Sita replies, then it will be clear that the suicide bomber killed their parents, driven by religious fear of grave torture, believing his actions would save him from eternal torment after death. The duo then heads inside the tunnel with Adil following Sita. As they move forward, Adil's responses becomes distant, and Sita realizes he is no longer behind her. Meanwhile, Adil is seen searching for her, visibly scared. In the dark, Sita senses a presence, and sees a child behind her, and when Sita asks the child who is he, the child slowly stands, and introduces himself as Ismail. Terrified, Sita runs to escape, and when she finally exits the tunnel, she discovers that Inia and some others have captured Adil. In the following scene, teacher Umayya takes Sita to her office, and explains that personal struggles do not justify acts of rebellion. She then places a red hijab on Sita, reminding her that Allah gives people misfortune for two reasons: to remove some of their sins, and to encourage them to surrender to Allah. Overcome with emotion, Sita begins to sob, expressing how much she misses her parents. Moved by her distress, Umayya removes the red hijab and replaces it with a white one. Sita then asks about Ismail, whom she had encountered in the tunnel, catching Umayya off guard with surprise. Just then, Inia enters the room, removes the white hijab, and sternly reminds Sita that rules must be followed, and that she needs to acknowledge her sins. Later, as Sita walks toward school with her fellow students, a car passes by, and one of the students points out that he is Mr. Ilham, the school's owner, and the one funding their education. That evening, Sita overhears a tense conversation between Umayya and Inia. Umayya insists that Ilham must be stopped from doing whatever he's doing to the children, under the guise of free Islamic education. Inia, however, defends him, arguing that Ilham is providing the children with free schooling. In response, Umayya brings up Ismail, reminding Inia that Ismail is dead, and asking who Ilham plans to target next. Inia quietly replies, Adil. As Sita prepares to flee from the looming danger, Umayya secretly meets with her, and hands her a bag filled with essentials for the escape, including the cassette. Apologetically, Umayya tells Sita she's sorry for what has happened and what is yet to come. Sita soon finds Adil inside a car, appearing dazed and unresponsive. Together, they head towards the haunted tunnel, the only escape route. As they enter the dark tunnel, Adil mentions that their uncle has sold their house, but Sita warns him to stay hidden, or else their uncle will send them back. She then asks Adil what they did to him, but he remains silent. Suddenly, they hear a sound of someone crying, filling them both with unease. Sita tries to dismiss it, suggesting it's probably just an animal. However, she soon realizes that Adil's hand feels unusually cold. Horrified, she looks down to see that a ghostly child is holding her hand instead. The child vanishes as quickly as it appeared. Panicked, Sita jumps up and demands to know who's there. The ghostly child reappears behind her and whispers, Ismail. Terrified, Sita runs, but the child's cries for help echo in her ears. She eventually finds Adil, helps him to his feet, and they both sprint toward the tunnel's exit. As they make their escape, they hear Ismail's voice pleading from behind, Don't leave me. Years later, as an adult, Sita is working as a nurse at an elderly care home. After an elderly patient named Ganda passes away, her colleague, Juwita, suggests they give him a proper Islamic burial since he has no family. Sita excuses herself, still preoccupied with her personal mission to discredit the belief in grave torture. She heads to the hall, where she encounters an elderly couple, Pundi and Nani. Pundi tells her they won't be going out today due to the sadness surrounding Ganda's death, though Nani still wishes to leave. Sita reassures them, telling Nani she's free to go, but at that moment, Nani's ring falls to the floor. Sita then suggests that Nani go out alone, accompanied by a nurse, but Pundi insists that he won't let her go anywhere without him, joking that she's too clumsy. A little later, a man excitedly announces that his daughter is appearing on a TV show. While thanking Sita for her care, he suggests that she should be a guest on the show, commenting that caring for the elderly must be more important than looking after animals. Just then, Mr. Wahyu, another elderly resident, calls for Sita. Her colleague, Lani, advises her to check on him. When Sita arrives at Mr. Wahyu's room, he asks her to tell his children to stop visiting and bothering him. Sita kindly informs his children that their father needs to stay at the nursing home for his daily checkups. It is revealed that Wahyu and his children have a strained relationship, and he prefers to live on his own terms. After his children and Sita leaves the room, Wahyu is seen trying to retrieve a gun from his drawer, but his other hand stops him. The dark secret behind his suicidal tendencies and his haunting past will soon be uncovered. In the following scene, we find Adil, now working as a mortician, preparing Ganda's body for burial. Afterward, he meets with Sita and anxiously asks if Ganda is the one. Sita reassures him that he isn't, explaining that Ganda lived a righteous life, according to those who knew him. It is seen that Sita is still obsessively pursuing her dangerous mission to find the most sinful individuals, and debunk the existence of grave torture. At the graveyard, Adil tells Sita that even if grave torture were real, it would only affect the soul, not the physical body. Sita disagrees, insisting that both the body and soul are said to endure the torment. She further argues that she wants to free people from superstitions, pointing out how fear-based beliefs can drive people to commit extreme acts, like the suicide bombing that killed their parents. Adil reminds her that they saw a ghost in the tunnel, but Sita dismisses it as a hallucination caused by a lack of oxygen. She adds that someone needs to prove how religion manipulates people through fear. Sita then takes Adil to the grave she discovered 10 years ago, pointing it out as part of her investigation. Adil reminds her that when she examined the grave back then, she didn't hear or witness anything unusual. He questions whether that silence alone isn't enough to prove that grave torture is just a myth. However, Sita remains unconvinced, stating that this is not enough to change the beliefs of a deeply religious population. Pointing to a nearby grave, Sita coldly declares that they will bury the next man here, beside this one, to ensure he experiences the torment of grave torture, and so will the man they are preparing to bury now. Adil, confused, asks who this person is. Sita cryptically responds that he is the most ruthless man she's ever known, but she refuses to reveal his identity. She then plays a tape filled with chilling screams and disturbing noises. In a flashback, it's revealed that the man buried in the grave was a notorious serial killer, shot dead by the police. The tape, which contains haunting sounds of torture, was recorded by the suicide bomber who claimed they were coming from the killer's grave. However, as per the article, no one believed the recording, and dismissed it as fake. Meanwhile, Adil returns home to find his wife furious. She throws his bag at him, angrily demanding a divorce, saying she needs a man who provides emotional support, not just financial stability. One night, Sita confronts Wahyu, who calmly explains that a person's conscience is shaped by their moral values or belief system, which doesn't necessarily have to be rooted in religion. He goes on to say that his personal code of ethics doesn't forbid lying, stealing, or even killing. He claims he can commit these acts without guilt. As long as he cheats man's law, he faces no consequences. Sita presses him, asking if he doesn't believe in religion, does he also think there will be no consequences after death? Wahyu responds by questioning what actually gets tortured, the body or the soul. He reasons that if it's the body, it's already dead and feels nothing, and if it's the soul, why do religious teachings emphasize on physical torture? He believed that all the good he had done in his life would in a way negate all the wrongs he'd committed. Sita retorts, like funding an Islamic boarding institute and sexually assaulting its students? Shocked, Wahyu asks, "Who are you?" To which Sita reveals that she was once a student at one of his institutes, and that her brother was one of his victims, though they both managed to escape. She also accuses him of killing Ismail. It became obvious that she took the job only because Wahyu was a patient there. Wahyu, unfazed, defends himself by claiming he gave all of them a better life, including those she calls victims. Sita challenges him, asking if he doesn't believe in grave torture, then why did he disappear, change his name, and live in hiding? At this point, she realizes Adil has overheard their conversation. Enraged, Adil storms into the room, lunging at Wahyu and attempting to choke his abuser. Sita intervenes, pleading for Adil to stop, and he reluctantly releases Wahyu. Without remorse, Wahyu acknowledges that he remembers Adil from the institute and what happened to their parents. With Wahyu's sins now exposed, Sita declares that their life has a purpose, to witness what happens to people like him in the grave. She adds that if a sinner like Wahyu doesn't face punishment after death, it would prove that religion is just a myth. Wahyu asks if she means torture by the angels, Murker and Nicker, the angels of grave, who appears beautiful to the pious, and horrifying to the sinners. He questions what could be the worst punishment, suggesting that it depends on what one fears the most. He insinuates that what Sita fears most is discovering that everything she's been told about grave torture is true. As the conversation continues, it becomes apparent that Wahyu has been secretly recording everything on his phone. He then opens a drawer and pulls out a gun, stating that he has his own form of torture and that he can help Sita achieve her purpose. He cynically remarks that life is a joke, and those searching for meaning are fools, while others are losers. As other elderly residents gather around, Wahyu bids them good luck, and in a final act, he shoots himself, ending his life.